I never thought I'd be the guy who sits alone in his car at midnight, staring at a half-empty gas station and wondering how in the hell the life he'd built since he was 17 went off the rails. But here I am, 44, separated, two teenage boys asleep back at the rental, and a noise in my chest that feels like a mix of anger, relief, and whatever grief tastes like when it stops being sharp and turns into a dull hum. If you'd asked anyone who knew us back in Baton Rouge, they'd have sworn I'd die married to Sarah. Hell, I would have sworn it. When you grow up with someone, literally grow up, it becomes less like marriage and more like gravity. It just is. You don't question the ground under your feet. You don't ask if the sky is staying put. You assume the life you built is the life you'll keep. I met Sarah when we were both 17. I was the quiet kid who read car magazines instead of going to parties. She was the loud, confident girl who could walk into a room and pull all the oxygen toward herself. I fell hard and fast, the way only teenagers can. She said she loved how calm I was, how I made her laugh, how I kept her grounded. We got married at 25 and had our boys a year later, practically Irish twins. We built a life, a home, stability. We did all the things two kids playing adults are supposed to do. And for a long time, I really believed we were good. I work from home writing technical manuals, not glamorous, not thrilling, just steady. It means late nights because the clients I work with are scattered across time zones, but I never minded. I'd sit in my little home office hammering out documentation while Sarah slept, and honestly, that routine felt comforting, like a life with predictable edges. Sarah worked as a parts manager at a big Ford dealership in town, same place she's been since she was 19. She knew every department, every greasy hallway, every name tag. I used to joke that she was part of the building's foundation. She'd laugh and say, "You like that I have a job I won't get fired from?" Funny how some jokes age like milk. But let me rewind, because the real story, the story that blew up everything I thought I knew, started with something stupid. Something so small I almost didn't notice it. The gym. Sarah has never been a gym person. I don't mean that rudely. She's always hated working out. Said treadmills were mechanical torture devices and that she'd rather walk around the neighborhood. So imagine my surprise last year when she suddenly announced, with the kind of enthusiasm people usually reserve for puppies or winning lottery tickets, that she was going to start hitting a 6 a.m. Saturday gym class with her friend Jess. And I swear, the way she looked at me when she said it, it wasn't guilt, it was dare. Like she wanted me to object so she could be offended. I didn't object. Why would I? After 2 decades together, you learn to pick your battles, and exercising seemed like the least battle-worthy thing on earth. For 3 Saturdays in a row, she got up before sunrise, got dressed with more effort than I'd seen in years, and left with a water bottle and a little bounce in her step. The first week, I thought, good for her. The second week, I thought, damn, she's really sticking with it. The third week, I thought, that's new. Then came week 4. I'm sitting in my office at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, halfway through writing an absurd paragraph about hydraulic pressure testing when I get a text from Jess. I barely know her outside of birthday parties and school fundraisers. "Hey Mike, everything okay with Sarah? Haven't seen her in weeks." Weeks. Plural. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. That's the moment, the exact second, my stomach dropped. Not because I believed Sarah was cheating. Honestly, the thought didn't even connect at first. It was more like someone tapping on the glass of a perfect little snow globe I'd been living inside. Just a tiny crack. But you only need one crack. When she came home that evening, sweaty like she'd actually worked out, gym bag and all, I didn't know how to bring it up. So I didn't. I tucked it away. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was chalking up every new habit to middle-aged restlessness. She started taking decompression drives after work. She bought new clothes. Not a lot, just enough to notice. And her phone? It became an extra limb. Always face down, notifications silenced, the bathroom door locked during showers, which she never did before. And still, I told myself, dude, chill, she's just stressed. Then the mood swings started, the snappiness, the way she'd pick fights about dishes or my work schedule or the way I parented the boys. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd say, "Why do you always assume something's wrong? God, Mike, not everything is about you." Except something was wrong, and it wasn't about me. Not entirely, anyway. But the real kick in the teeth wasn't even the cheating. Not yet. The real kick was how she'd twist the knife in small, casual ways. Like the car. My dream car, my holy grail since childhood, is a black 1967 Chevrolet Impala 4-door hardtop. Same body style as Baby from Supernatural. I fell in love with that car before I knew what love was. When the show came out, I fell in love all over again. Something about it felt like freedom on wheels. A stupid, childish dream maybe, but a dream all the same. Every time I mentioned it, Sarah shut it down like I was asking to drain our savings and buy a spout boat made of diamonds. Ugly old gas guzzler. You're too old for a midlife crisis on wheels. We have orthodontist bills, Mike. Maybe you should dream smaller. Dream smaller. That line stayed with me longer than she knew. I didn't realize then that she wasn't talking about the car. She was talking about me. And while I was clipping my own wings out of love, she was using hers to fly somewhere I wasn't invited. Looking back, I can tell you the gym lie was the first crack, the first hairline fracture. But the real explosion, the undeniable evidence, was still coming. And when it hit, it would change everything. There's a moment in every dying marriage when the truth stops knocking and kicks the damn door in. Mine came on a random Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that should have been forgettable. Warm Baton Rouge air, kids at school, me buried in documentation about industrial safety valves. But I'd been carrying that text from Jess for weeks. It sat in my head like a buzzing fluorescent light, flickering at the worst possible moments. Every time Sarah left the house, every time her phone face-planted on the table, every, "What? I just need space, Mike," it was there, buzzing, reminding me something wasn't right. I didn't want to be that guy, the snooper, the paranoid husband reading self-help articles at 2 a.m. about emotional distancing. I really didn't. But living with someone who feels like a ghost of the person you married, it changes you. Eventually, the tension gets loud enough that ignoring it becomes the crazy option. So, I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I logged into our phone account. 1 password, 3 clicks. And suddenly, I was staring at a spreadsheet of calls and texts that might as well have been a confession letter written in neon paint. Her number was normal. My number was normal. Friends, coworkers, family, all normal. But then there was another number. Just 10 digits, sitting there innocently, like it wasn't the wrecking ball about to smash through my life. Over 4,000 texts in a single month. Hundreds of calls. Many of them while I was at home. Some during her supposed gym sessions. Some during her late night just need to clear my head drives. And every single one of them deleted from her phone. You know that feeling when your knees go a little loose, like your body suddenly realizes you can't unknow what you just saw? That was me, frozen in the swivel chair in my office while the Louisiana sun kept shining like nothing was happening. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't even breathe right. I just sat there thinking, well, there it is. The crack just became a sinkhole. I clicked the number, looked it up, and when the name came up, yeah, Jason. Some mid-level parts guy at the very dealership where she worked. You couldn't script it better. Cheating wife, coworker, dealership cliches, the whole damn bingo card. I didn't confront her that night, or the next day. I wish I could say I was planning something clever, but the truth was uglier. I was scared. Not scared of her, scared of the answer. Because once you ask the question, there's no going back to pretending everything is fine. But reality doesn't wait for courage. It just keeps piling evidence until even cowards have to open their mouths. The dam broke 2 nights later. She came home late, inventory audit, looking suspiciously like someone who'd had her hands all over something that wasn't Ford parts. Hair messy, lipstick faded, that weird afterglow people get when their conscience takes the day off. She grabbed a bowl of cereal and sat across from me at the kitchen table. I watched her eat like I was studying a stranger. And at some point I realized I couldn't keep swallowing lies to preserve a marriage she'd already thrown away. So I said it. Not angrily, not dramatically, just tired. Sarah, I told her, I already know more than you think I do. Her spoon froze halfway to her mouth. Her pupils blew wide like a deer in headlights. And for a split second, I swear to God, she looked relieved. Then the panic hit. What are you talking about? Deflection, first stage. I know about the number. Confusion, second stage. I've seen the records. Fear, third stage. You've been lying for months. Anger, fourth stage. You went through my phone records? And there it was, the final stage, flipping the script. I didn't yell, I didn't fall for it. I just looked at her and said, "You don't text a friend 4,000 times a month." Her face twisted. Guilty people get angry, and Sarah was no exception. "I can't believe you would spy on me," she snapped, like I was the one who'd been slipping off to motel parking lots. I let her rant, let her stomp around, let her blame me, the kids, the stress at work, the universe, everything except the actual problem. She finally said, "It's not what you think," which in cheater language means it's exactly what you think. When she finally admitted we were just talking, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic I couldn't help it. She slept on the couch that night, not because I asked her to, because she didn't want to be in the same room with the man she'd betrayed. Shame is a funny thing like that. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Pancakes for the boys, chirpy voice, the whole Stepford routine. But every time she looked at me, her eyes skittered away like a kid caught stealing candy. That was the beginning of the end. The thing people don't tell you about being betrayed is that it's not the cheating itself that guts you. It's the arrogance. The way they look you in the face and expect you to swallow it. The way they assume you'll make yourself small so they don't have to. For the next week, we lived in this weird purgatory. Not fighting, not talking, not touching. Just coexisting like two strangers trapped in the same burning building. And the boys, man, kids aren't stupid. They feel everything. My oldest asked me if Mom was mad at me. My youngest asked why she was always on her phone. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect them. But after seeing those phone records, lies tasted different. Sour, heavy. Something huge was shifting under the surface of our marriage, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything cracked open. I just didn't realize how bad the explosion would be, or how much collateral damage there'd be. The moment I confronted her was the moment the whole dam finally gave way. All the pressure, all the tension, all the little warning signs I'd tried to ignore, everything burst at once and washed through our life with a force I couldn't stop. Not literally, of course, though the actual house situation later on deserves its own applause. But emotionally, the collapse was total. After the night I confronted her, everything between us turned gray. Not black, not white, just this murky, metallic, dead gray. The kind of color you see in hospital waiting rooms or storm drains. We moved around each other like we were avoiding landmines. The boys noticed, the dog noticed, even the stupid houseplants looked stressed. The truth hangs in a home like humidity, heavy, sticky, impossible to ignore. She didn't admit anything real that first night, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. Cheaters don't confess, they negotiate. They leak out little drops of truth only when cornered, 1 teaspoon at a time. And I was still in that stupid phase where I hoped maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't as bad as the phone records made it look. Spoiler, it was worse. The full unraveling happened 3 days later on a Sunday morning. I was making eggs for the boys while Sarah sat at the table pretending to scroll Facebook. Her face was puffy. She'd been crying, but not enough to be sorry. Crying from exhaustion, fear, panic, but not remorse. When the boys finished eating and went to play Xbox, she cleared her throat. "Mike," she said, her voice shaky, "we need to talk." If I had $1 for every marriage that died on those 5 words. She started with the classics. "We've been distant. I felt lonely. I didn't know how to talk to you. It just happened." If you went to any cheating forum and hit shuffle, you'd land on the exact same script. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just listened and watched how she twisted the story to avoid being the villain. She said it wasn't physical, which, again, is cheater for it was physical, but I want to see if I can get away with lying one more time. I asked, "Is it Jason?" She flinched so hard she knocked her coffee over. The mug shattered on the tile. That was confession enough. But I wanted to hear her say it. Not because I needed the pain, I'd already felt it, but because I needed the truth to stop wearing masks. So I said, "Tell me." And finally, she whispered, "Yes." The quietest word, the loudest betrayal. Then came the tears, the shaking hands, the whole performance. And that's what it was, a performance. Even then, even in the middle of the wreckage she caused, she was acting for the audience. I didn't hug her. I didn't hold her. I didn't rush to comfort her like I had for 27 years whenever she got overwhelmed. I just sat there staring at a woman I didn't recognize. I asked, "How long?" She wiped her nose. "A few months." I later learned it was closer to a year. I asked, "Why him?" She shrugged. "We talked a lot at work." "A lot?" Sarah isn't a talker. She never just talks. She complains, she vents, she debates, she commands. But talk? No. She saves that for people she's trying to impress. That hurt more than anything. Not the sex, but the intimacy, the sharing, the parts of her I thought were mine. She went on about how she didn't mean for it to happen, and how she still loved me, and how she never stopped being a good mom. Good moms don't blow up their children's stability because they're bored. But I didn't say that. I swallowed it like acid. Then she said something that flipped a switch in me forever. "I just need time. We can work this out, but you need to understand your role in this." My role. Like her affair was a group project we both failed. That was the moment I realized we weren't partners anymore. We were combatants, and she fully expected to win by gaslighting me into submission. I told her, "You cheated, not me." She shot back, "Well, maybe if you talked to me instead of hiding in your office every night." Ah, yes, the classic, "Your job made me cheat." Oldest play in the book. I work nights because it pays our bills, because it let her buy the new Ford truck last year, because it allowed braces for both boys without debt, because I built a career that let me be present, really present for our kids. But sure, the manuals made her cheat. We spent the rest of that Sunday in separate corners of the house. The boys tiptoed around us, confused, quiet, waiting for Normal to return. And I knew, deep in my bones, Normal wasn't coming back. Not ever. On Monday, we started the conversation. The one you hope you'll never have, but eventually every broken marriage faces. She said she wanted to try counseling. I said, counseling can't resurrect the dead. She said she didn't want to throw away 27 years. I said she already did. She said she did it because she felt unseen. I said she didn't even see herself. At one point she asked, "Do you want a divorce?" And I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because the boys were in the next room. And despite everything, I didn't want them to hear their dad say yes. But inside, the yes had already spoken. Still, I'm not the kind of man to pack bags and disappear. We had a mortgage, we had kids, we had a life that needed untangling, not detonating. So we tried nesting. Basically, cohabitation while emotionally separated. The worst idea ever. She slept in the guest room. I slept in ours. We communicated only about the boys. We ate separately. We lived like tenants who hated each other but couldn't break the lease. It turned toxic fast. She would make snide comments under her breath. I would stay in my office longer just to avoid her. She'd leave the house at random hours. I stopped asking where she went. She'd cry in the laundry room at night. I'd sit in my car in the driveway just to breathe. The boys became quieter. Dinner became tense. Every small corner of the house became a reminder of something we'd broken. Meanwhile, I'd lie awake at night thinking about that stupid 1967 Impala, my dream since I was 12, the thing she mocked every time I mentioned it. For years, she made me feel stupid for wanting something that was mine, and mine alone. Looking back, wanting that car wasn't the problem. Wanting permission to want it, that was the real tragedy. 2 weeks into nesting, I knew the marriage was over. She knew it too, but neither of us had said it out yet.
I wish I could tell you that the end came cleanly, that she admitted everything and we split with dignity like adults. But real life isn't a movie, and people like Sarah don't go down with honesty. They go down swinging, grabbing anything they can on the way. The kids, the house, the memories, the narrative. Especially the narrative. The more obvious it became that our marriage was hanging by dental floss, the more she tried to control the story. To her sister, she said we were growing apart. To her mom, she said I was emotionally unavailable. To her best friend, she said we both made mistakes. Not once, not one single time did she tell anyone the truth. She cheated with a coworker named Jason from the parts department, and she threw away a 27-year partnership like a scratch-off ticket that didn't win. She inflated her victimhood like a parade balloon. The worst part? I still didn't blow her cover. Not to her family, not to mine, not to the boys. I guess some part of me was still trying to protect something. Maybe my pride, maybe the kids, maybe the ghost of the girl I met at 17. But silence is gasoline to a liar, and she lit match after match. One morning, she cornered me in the kitchen, voice shaking from rage or fear or both.
I'm not ruining the boys' lives, she said. We're not selling the house. There it was, her real priority. Not the kids, not the marriage, not accountability. The house. She loved that house. She picked the paint colors, the backsplash, the stupid farmhouse sink she insisted we needed because Pinterest demanded it. That house was her temple, her trophy, her Instagram background, her identity. And she assumed, truly assumed, that she would keep it. You're the one leaving, she added, folding her arms. You should be the one to move. I took a slow breath because anger makes stupid decisions, and I needed clarity, not impulse. I'm not leaving the boys, I told her. You won't be, she shot back. You'll see them on weekends. Weekends? Like I was some part-time guest in my own children's lives? That's when the temperature dropped in my veins. Calm, cold, steady. Sarah, I said, you don't get to choose the terms of a divorce you caused. She blinked like I slapped her. The entitlement was that ingrained. From that moment on, nesting turned into psychological trench warfare. Every conversation was a fight waiting to happen. Every silence was louder than shouting. She started going out more. She started sleeping out more. Sometimes she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. And strangely, the more she drifted, the clearer I felt. There's a calm that comes after the worst pain, a numbness that feels almost like strength. About a month into this hell, she suggested, no, announced, that we needed professional guidance. In cheater language, that means a mediator who will help them look less guilty on paper. So we found lawyers. Mine was a quiet, older man named Harris who spoke like a surgeon, calm, precise, unshakably factual. Sarah hired a sharp-faced woman who acted like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. The first joint meeting set the tone. Her lawyer started with, Sarah would like to retain the marital home for the stability of the children. Harris didn't even look up from his folder. No. Her lawyer blinked. Excuse me? No, he repeated. My client will not be giving up the home. At minimum, the property is sold and equity is split. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah looked at me like I'd stolen fire from the gods. But I put more work into the home, she snapped. Harris didn't blink. You contributed decor, Mike paid the mortgage. She opened her mouth, shut it, opened it again like a fish trying to reinvent oxygen. We went back and forth for weeks. Custody schedules, bank accounts, who gets the dog, me, who gets the truck, spoiler, not her, and what to do with the house. The house became the battleground she refused to surrender. She'd say things like, I grew up moving around. I'm not doing that again. The boys need stability. This is the only home they've known. All true statements, but coming from the wrong person. You don't get to burn down a house and then cry that it's cold. But the more the lawyers talked, the more reality sank in for her. The math wasn't on her side. Her salary was lower. The house was jointly owned. Louisiana doesn't give cheaters a prize. And deep down, she knew a judge hearing the whole story would not hand her the kingdom and hand me a cardboard box. One night, after a brutal meeting, she cornered me again, eyes red and wild. You're punishing me, she said. No, I replied. I'm divorcing you. It's the same thing. No, I repeated. This is the consequence of your choices. She broke down sobbing, the ugly kind, breathless and loud, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not joy, not anger, not pity. Just empty. It's a strange thing when grief burns itself out. In the end, the house went on the market. Oh, she fought it. She tried guilt, then threats, then nostalgia, then the boys, then begging, then silence. But the papers were signed, the listing went up, and within a week we had offers over asking. The day the sold sign went up in the yard was the exact moment she realized the story she'd been telling herself, that she'd keep the house, keep the stability, keep the narrative, was dead. She hadn't talked to me for 3 days, and honestly, it was peaceful. With my half of the equity pending and my protected savings sitting untouched, something inside me began to shift. A door that had been locked for decades clicked open. For the first time in years, maybe in my whole adult life, I could feel a small, bright spark flicker in my chest. Freedom? Hope? Possibility? Or maybe just a black 1967 Impala with my name finally written all over it. The strange thing about watching someone hit rock bottom is realizing how deep their denial really was. Sarah always acted like life would rearrange itself around her decisions, bad or good. Like she was the main character and the universe was contractually obligated to make her comfortable. But life doesn't work that way. Life has claws and consequences. The house sale was the first real consequence she couldn't outrun. When the buyer's inspection passed and the closing date became real, not theoretical, not negotiable, real, Sarah started unraveling in ways I didn't expect. I thought she'd yell or bargain or storm out dramatically. Instead, she got quiet. Not peaceful quiet, funeral quiet. The kind where you can feel someone replaying their entire life in their head and hating the movie. Meanwhile, I felt lighter. Not happy, just lighter, like someone had been pressing a thumb into my chest for years and finally let go. The boys handled it better than either of us expected. Kids are resilient when the adults around them stop lying. I told them simply that sometimes grown-ups can't stay married anymore, but that I will always be their dad. Always be there, always show up. Sarah cried during that talk. I didn't. A week later, the dealership drama hit. I was in the middle of packing books from my office when Sarah came home early, face pale and tight. I got written up, she said, dropping her purse like it weighed 100 pounds. For what? She hesitated. They said there were complaints. Oh? I knew exactly what complaints meant. Dealerships run on gossip the way engines run on oil. They're saying I created a hostile environment, she continued. They said I made inappropriate personal relationships in the workplace. Translation, everyone knew about Jason. Jason got written up too, she added, voice cracking. Of course he did. Coworker affairs don't stay secret long. People talk, people watch, and dealerships aren't churches. They don't pretend to be shocked when messy adults ruin their own lives. They just don't want lawsuits. The next day, she came home even earlier. I lost my job. Just like that. 19 years? Gone. She tried to fight it, saying she was being targeted, but you can't outlogic corporate HR once they decide you're a liability. Her affair didn't just break our marriage. It broke her career. Jason didn't defend her, didn't protect her, didn't take any blame. He kept his head down. Typical. She tried to laugh it off at first. I needed a change anyway. This is temporary. I'll land somewhere better. But Louisiana isn't Silicon Valley. Parts managers aren't scarce, and dealership circles are small. Her name spread fast. 2 weeks after losing her job, she lost her truck. Ford Credit doesn't care about feelings. If you miss payments, the tow truck shows up at dawn and drags your shiny new F-150 out of the driveway while your neighbors pretend not to watch. She blamed me. None of this would have happened if you hadn't pushed the divorce. Really? I raised an eyebrow. You think HR fired you because of me? Or because you slept with a coworker on company time? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. In the middle of all this chaos, something unexpected happened. I stopped feeling sorry for her. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. For years, I let her reactions dictate my life. Her moods dictated my moods. Her wants outweighed my wants. Her voice drowned out mine. Now, she was just a person facing consequences. And I was finally remembering who I used to be. The divorce settlement finalized around the same time the house sale closed. My half of the equity landed in my account. Not millions, but enough to breathe, enough to start over, enough to make a certain 12-year-old dream come true. I didn't tell anyone what I planned to do. Not my parents, not my friends, not even the boys. I wanted the moment to belong to me. Late one night, after everyone was asleep, I sat at the little rented kitchen table with my laptop and typed. 1967 Chevrolet Impala, 4-door hardtop for sale. The listings weren't many. These cars are either rusted to hell, overpriced, or owned by guys who treat them like sacred relics. But I found her. Black paint, original body, restored interior, solid engine, straight frame. Not a show car, but a driver, a real one. The ad said, "Built with love, selling due to retirement." I called the number. An older man answered. We talked for an hour about cars, life, supernatural, the stupidity of ethanol fuel, everything. By the end of the call, he said, "Son, I think this car was waiting for the right driver." I wired the deposit the next morning. 2 days later, I boarded a flight to Alabama with a cashier's check in my pocket. And when I saw her in person for the first time, that long, black, impossibly familiar silhouette, something in my chest cracked open in the best possible way. It wasn't just a car. It was a promise I made to myself decades ago and finally kept. The old man handed me the keys like he was passing down an heirloom. I drove that Impala all the way back to Louisiana with the windows down and the radio blasting classic rock I hadn't listened to in years. I didn't think about Sarah. I didn't think about the years I wasted trying to make myself smaller. I didn't think about the wreckage behind me. I thought about the road ahead. Wide, loud, open. When I pulled into the rental driveway, the boys ran outside with their jaws hanging open. "Dad, holy crap! Is this the car? Like from Supernatural?" Their excitement was worth every lawyer bill, every sleepless night, every tear I didn't cry. Sarah saw it 2 days later when she came to drop off some boxes. She stared at it like it personally betrayed her. "You bought that?" "No," I told her. "I earned it." She didn't respond. She just looked at the Impala, then at me, then down at her feet. And for the first time since this whole disaster started, I think she realized the full extent of what she lost. Not the house, not the job, not the image, me. And she would never get any of it back. The strange thing about rebuilding your life is realizing how much of the old one was held together with habits, fear, and routine rather than love. Once the house was sold, once the settlement was final, once the Impala sat in my driveway like a black steel exclamation mark, I expected to feel empty. But I didn't. I felt spacious. Life got quiet in a way that didn't feel lonely, just uncluttered. No slammed doors, no passive-aggressive sighs, no pretending. The boys adapted fast. Kids really do follow the emotional climate of their home, and without the tension of our old one, they relaxed. They laughed more, they asked more questions. They wanted to ride in the Impala every day. Meanwhile, Sarah was falling apart one thread at a time. I didn't know the details immediately. She wasn't talking to me unless it was about the boys. But Baton Rouge might be a map dot, yet it functions like a small town, especially when it comes to gossip. Word travels faster than common sense. At the dealership, her departure wasn't just a firing, it became a spectacle. Apparently, one of the sales guys saw her crying in her truck right before the repo tow truck took it away. A few coworkers tried to comfort her, but most people kept their distance. Affairs sour the air around you. People feel it, even if they don't say it out loud. And dealerships are brutal ecosystems. You slip, you fall. You fall, you get replaced. The job hunt didn't go well for her either. The Ford job defined her entire adult life, and everything she knew revolved around that environment. The workflow, the culture, the exact same people she now couldn't use as references. Parts departments talk too. No one wants to hire the woman who blew up her career for a coworker with a spotty attendance record and an attitude problem. So she pivoted. Instead of fixing her life, she doubled down on the one thing she still had control over: Jason. Their relationship, if you can call trauma bonding through mutual self-sabotage a relationship, imploded almost immediately once real life entered the chat. He had kids from 3 previous marriages. He had alimony. He had debt. He had a temper. He had no long-term plan beyond showing up and seeing what happens. Basically, the kind of man who looks exciting when you're bored and unstable when you actually need a partner. Once they didn't have the dealership as their playground anymore, their connection shriveled. They tried to spend time together, but reality always ruins fantasy. He still liked going out for beers after work. She suddenly couldn't afford that. He didn't want to take on her and our kids in any real capacity. She didn't want to admit she miscalculated her leap into freedom. People saw them fighting at Walmart, at a gas station, in the parking lot of a Chili's. Not dramatic movie fights, just 2 exhausted adults who realized the thing they blew up their lives for wasn't even worth having. But she stuck with it, probably because quitting him would mean admitting her entire crisis was a mistake. Then came the health issues. Stress is a funny thing. You can ignore it, you can deny it, but it keeps a tally. She started losing weight in a way that didn't look intentional. She looked drained all the time, like she hadn't slept in weeks. I heard from the boys that she spent whole afternoons lying on the couch when they were over there. Nothing dangerous, just a woman whose world kept shrinking. She went to the doctor and apparently got slapped with a high blood pressure diagnosis, the kind that makes physicians use phrases like lifestyle adjustments and significant stressors. She blamed everything except the real cause. She blamed the divorce, blamed money, blamed work, blamed aging, blamed me. She never blamed the one decision that started it all. I didn't pleasure in her decline. I won't pretend I'm some saint who wished her well, but I also didn't want her destroyed. I wanted her to be stable for the boys. But it's hard to stabilize when the ground beneath you keeps shifting. While she was spiraling, my life settled into something I barely recognized: calm. I woke up early. I started working during the day instead of nights. I cooked meals that didn't revolve around stress eating. I took the boys fishing again, something Sarah always rolled her eyes at. I took the Impala on long drives with no destination beyond somewhere away from everything. I wasn't partying, I wasn't rebounding, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just existing without tension. And existing without someone measuring my worth against my usefulness felt new, strange, addictive. People around me noticed the change. Friends said I looked younger, my stress disappeared. I slept better. I breathed deeper. The Impala helped in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder that I still had dreams that didn't require permission. I polished it on Sundays while listening to music I hadn't touched in 20 years. I took the long route home just to feel the rumble under my hands. I wasn't partying. I wasn't rebounding. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just existing without tension. And existing without someone measuring my worth against my usefulness felt new, strange, addictive. People around me noticed the change. Friends said I looked younger, my stress disappeared. I slept better. I breathed deeper. The Impala helped in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder that I still had dreams that didn't require permission. I polished it on Sundays while listening to music I hadn't touched in 20 years. I took the long route home just to feel the rumble under my hands. One evening, during a custody drop-off, Sarah saw me pulling out of the driveway in the Impala. She stared at the car with hollow eyes, then at me, and it hit her, maybe for the first time, that my life was moving forward while hers was stuck in place. There was a time she expected me to chase her, to beg, to compromise myself into oblivion to make her comfortable. Instead, I was thriving quietly. And nothing cuts a guilty person deeper than watching the person they underestimated rise without them. Jason is still in the picture, technically. If you call on and off screaming matches, ultimatums, financial strain, and mutual resentment in the picture. He didn't rescue her. He didn't become her fresh start. He became another anchor around her ankles. And I became the one who got out. There's a strange moment after a long, ugly divorce when the world suddenly feels bigger than it ever did before. Not because anything grand happens, but because the constant background noise that used to choke you suddenly goes quiet. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without someone else's voice crowding them out. The boys settled into the new routine faster than I expected. Kids adjust when the environment stops suffocating them. My oldest started opening up more. My youngest stopped clenching his jaw whenever Sarah came up in conversation. Our rental wasn't big or fancy, but it was peaceful. Peace is worth more than square footage. And with peace came something I hadn't felt since I was in my 20s. Curiosity. About life, people, places, myself. Part of that curiosity involved the Impala. That car became therapy in ways no counselor ever could. On evenings when the house was quiet and the boys were at Sarah's, I'd take the Impala out for long drives along the river. No destination, no schedule, just the rumble of that old V8 and the feeling of doing something for myself for once. People would wave, give thumbs up, ask about the engine at gas stations. Some wanted to talk supernatural. Some wanted to talk classic cars. Some just said, "Man, you've got yourself a beauty." I never realized how good it felt to talk to strangers who weren't sizing me up or asking for something. When you spend enough years shrinking your own wants to make someone else comfortable, you forget how to live in your own skin. The Impala reminded me. With the house sold, with the divorce complete, with custody sorted, I finally had the freedom to breathe and to leave. The first trip I took wasn't anything dramatic, just a 3-day weekend to Galveston. I booked a cheap motel by the water, packed a small bag, and drove the Impala the whole way with the windows down. The air smelt like salt and sunburns, and the kind of freedom I hadn't tasted in decades. I watched the ocean for hours, ate seafood at a plastic table with my feet in the sand, slept without tension twisting in my chest, woke up when I wanted, talked to no one unless I felt like it. I wasn't trying to reinvent myself. I was just remembering myself. When I got back to Baton Rouge, something shifted. I started saying yes to new things, small things. A coworker invited me to a backyard crawfish boil. I went. A neighbor asked if I wanted to join a local classic car meet. I said yes. A friend from high school messaged me asking if I wanted to grab a drink and catch up. I surprised myself by agreeing. My social life had been dead for years without me noticing. Marriage to Sarah wasn't partnership. It was isolation with paperwork. Dating wasn't the first thing on my mind, but it wasn't far behind. It started slow, simple conversations, coffee with someone who laughed easily, a drink with someone who didn't roll her eyes at my job, long talks with someone who actually asked me questions instead of monologuing until my brain shut down. I didn't fall in love. I didn't rush. I wasn't trying to plug holes in my life. I was simply realizing that I wasn't broken, unlovable, or hard to deal with. I was just with the wrong person for too long. Meanwhile, Sarah was sinking deeper into the consequences of her own choices. The boys told me she wasn't home much. She and Jason argued a lot. She was stressed, tired, sometimes sick. Her life didn't stabilize. It kept tilting sideways. And here's the thing I didn't expect. I stopped caring. Not out of bitterness, not out of anger, out of release. For years, everything she felt became my responsibility. If she was sad, I had to fix it. If she was angry, I had to calm her. If she was stressed, I had to adjust my life to soften the impact. But watching her downfall from a distance, with the knowledge that none of it was my burden anymore, gave me a clarity I never had when we were together. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was the mother of my kids. That's it. Her choices were hers now, not mine to absorb. My world became bigger as hers got smaller. I kept traveling in small bursts: Biloxi, Arkansas, North Carolina, little weekend escapes. The Impala became part of my identity, part of my healing. Every trip peeled off a layer of the old life, revealing a version of myself I actually liked. I started working out again, eating better, sleeping better, laughing more. And one day, without planning it, I realized something huge. I was happy. Not euphoric, not manic, not fake it for the kids happy. Just steady, simple, grounded happiness. The kind that comes from no longer betraying yourself. People always talk about revenge in situations like mine. They imagine big speeches, explosive confrontations, dramatic moments where justice is served in slow motion. But real revenge is quieter. It's waking up and not wishing your life was different. It's doing things because you want to. It's sitting in your car with the engine running and feeling grateful instead of trapped. It's watching your kids relax around you because they no longer live in a war zone. It's knowing you didn't break. You rebuilt. Meanwhile, karma was doing whatever karma does, and it didn't need help from me. Sarah's relationship with Jason kept deteriorating. Her job prospects stayed bleak. Bills piled up. Health issues lingered. Stress aged her faster than time ever did. People who betray others don't become villains. They become unstable. Their lives shake apart because dishonesty is a foundation made of sand. And me? I was driving into the future with a full tank and no dead weight.
There's a moment after a divorce when you stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. When you stop expecting chaos to walk back through your door. When calm stops feeling like a temporary visitor. It took me longer than I'd like to admit, but eventually the quiet became normal. And in that quiet, things I hadn't seen clearly before finally sharpened into focus. One of those things was the boys. Kids don't talk much during the storm. They watch. They absorb. They connect dots adults think they're hiding. Eventually, when the weather clears and they feel safe again, they start asking questions. Or worse, they start answering questions you never asked because you didn't want to know the answers. It happened on a Friday night. The boys and I had just finished watching a movie, something dumb and loud, teenage boy favorites. My oldest was washing his bowl, my youngest was sprawled across the couch asking if we could get pizza tomorrow. Normal conversation, normal life, normal noise. Then the oldest said, too casually, "Mom and Jason are fighting again." I paused. Not because I was surprised, that train had no brakes, but because neither of them had ever brought Jason up voluntarily. I asked carefully, "Do you guys see him much?" My youngest shrugged. "He's around. Not really." The oldest muttered, "He sleeps on the couch a lot." I didn't react. I didn't want to pry or turn the night into a therapy session. But kids know when you're listening, really listening, and sometimes that's all the invitation they need. My oldest sat down across from me and said, "Dad, we knew." The words hit like a slow punch. Not sudden, not sharp, just deep.
Knew what? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He looked older than 14 for a second. Too old. About Mom and Jason before the divorce. My throat tightened, not with anger, with grief. Grief for them, for what they saw, for what they carried quietly because they didn't know if they were supposed to say anything. My youngest added softly, "We heard them on the phone. She'd go outside and whisper, but we heard anyway. And she lied a lot. To you, to Grandma, to us." I didn't ask questions. Kids shouldn't have to relive things adults put on them. But they kept talking anyway. Not in detail, not in a dramatic confession, just little pieces that told me everything. Times she left the house without explanation. Times they heard fights on the phone. Times she came home late and tried to pretend everything was fine. Times she made excuses that didn't make sense. And the worst part? We didn't tell you because we didn't want to make things worse. That sentence will sit heavy in my chest for the rest of my life. I told them honestly that none of it was their job, that adults are responsible for their own messes, that they did nothing wrong, that they didn't owe loyalty to lies. They nodded, but I could tell it wasn't about absolution. It was about release. They'd held that secret like a stone in their pockets, and now they could finally put it down. Later that night, after they went to bed, I sat outside on the steps and let the night settle over me. Baton Rouge humidity, distant highway noise, cicadas buzzing, the usual soundtrack. But my thoughts were louder. For months, I'd been telling myself the boys didn't know, that I protected them from the worst parts. Turns out, they were protecting me too. And that's the part of divorce no one prepares you for. The kids grow up faster than they should because adults refuse to. A week later, something else happened. Sarah texted saying she wanted to talk about some things. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity and a need to keep co-parenting functional. She came by the rental early evening, worn down, shoulder slumped. Not the sharp, defensive woman who'd fought tooth and nail for the house she ended up losing. Just tired. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood in the driveway, looking at the Impala like it triggered some kind of uncomfortable truth. She said she'd been reflecting, which is usually cheater language for things are going badly. And sure enough, she got to it quickly. Jason and I are taking a break. I didn't reply. It wasn't my business. She went on, rambling about how stressful everything had been, how the job search kept hitting walls, how her health had been not great, how she felt overwhelmed, how life was more complicated than she expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't admit fault. She didn't bring up the affair. She didn't take responsibility. She just danced around the truth like she was afraid the ground would burn her if she got too close. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't looking for closure. She wasn't looking to reconcile. She wasn't even looking to blame. She was looking for a witness. Someone to validate that her suffering mattered. Someone to say she wasn't a bad person. Someone to assure her that she hadn't detonated her life on purpose, that the universe had simply been cruel to her. But I couldn't give her that. Not anymore. Not ever. I told her I hoped things stabilized for her and that the boys need her steady. Nothing more. No comfort, no reassurances, no emotional labor. I handed her back the same neutrality she'd given me during the worst months of my life. She left looking smaller than when she arrived. And for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who broke my heart, but a person who broke her own life and didn't know how to rebuild it. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel anything close to victory. I felt distance. Healthy, necessary distance. The boys later asked what she wanted. I told them just to talk. Nothing more. They nodded like that answer made perfect sense. That night, the three of us got in the Impala
and drove around until we found a place that sold late-night ice cream. The boys argue over toppings, I tease them about their terrible music taste, they mock my old man rock playlist. Normal chaos, the kind that feels like life instead of survival. And somewhere between the laughter and the roar of that old engine, I realized something. I didn't lose a family. I saved one. I kept the part that mattered. I let the part that tried to destroy us go.
Life didn't snap into perfection after the truth came out. It didn't suddenly turn cinematic with sunsets, profound revelations, and healing montages. It shifted slowly, almost quietly, in ways I didn't notice until months later when I glanced in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize the man staring back. Not because he was broken, but because he wasn't. The first big change was routine. Divorce rearranges your days whether you want to or not. At first it felt strange, like moving into someone else's skin. But eventually it began to feel like the life I was always supposed to have. I started waking up early. Not because Sarah wasn't slamming drawers or stomping through the bathroom, but because I wanted to. The boys would be asleep, the house still, the air cool. I'd make coffee, step outside, and sit on the porch while the world stretched awake around me. Sometimes I'd listen to the birds. Sometimes I'd stare at the Impala, black paint catching the morning light. Sometimes I'd just breathe. I didn't realize how long I'd gone through life without breathing properly. I shifted my work schedule to normal hours. No more writing documentation at 2 a.m. while the world slept and Sarah complained that my keyboard was too loud. I finished projects faster. Clients complimented my consistency. Money stabilized. Stress dropped. It's amazing how productive you become when you're not constantly tiptoeing around someone else's volatility. I also started cooking real meals again. Not what will Sarah criticize the least, but what actually sounds good. The boys loved it. They started helping out, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, sneaking ingredients when they thought I wasn't looking. Dinner became something we looked forward to instead of something we navigated. And in the midst of this normalcy, the Impala became part of our family language. We took weekend drives. We went to car meets. I taught the boys how to check the oil, how to listen for engine notes, how to treat a machine with respect. They bragged about it at school. Their friends asked for rides. They started taking pride in something that symbolized resilience, not ruin. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Meanwhile, Sarah stayed in the periphery, a presence, not a force. Our communication was minimal but civil. We coordinated schedules, school events, medical appointments. I didn't ask about her life, and she didn't volunteer. I didn't need updates to know things weren't going well. You can feel instability even from a distance. The boys mentioned little things occasionally. Mom seems tired. She's stressed. She and Jason argue a lot. She missed work again. Nothing dramatic, just a slow collapse happening quietly across town. I never said anything negative about her, not once. Not because I was protecting her, but because I was protecting them. Kids shouldn't have to carry their parents' baggage. They already carried too much. At some point, I realized almost everything in my life felt lighter. Grocery trips, evenings, weekends. Even the silence in the house felt clean instead of suffocating. I hadn't felt that since my 20s. I took more trips. Short ones at first, day drives through smaller Louisiana towns. Then longer ones, Memphis, Nashville, the Smoky Mountains. Not running away, just exploring, being a person again. On one of those trips, something unexpected happened. I didn't miss home because I was escaping something. I missed home because I liked my life now. I started dating again, in a very low-key, very cautious way. Not swiping for validation, not searching for replacement, not chasing chaos. Just meeting people, talking, listening, having normal connections without tension. A few dates went nowhere. A few turned into short flings, respectful ones, the kind where both sides know what they want. And then there was someone different. Not a soulmate, not a whirlwind, just someone steady, someone easy to talk to, someone who didn't need fixing or rescuing, someone who asked about my boys before she asked about my divorce, someone comfortable with silence, someone who liked the Impala for its rumble, not its TV legacy. We weren't rushing, we weren't labeling anything. It was gentle, slow, and exactly what a man rebuilding from the ashes needs. Something warm, not burning. Around this time, Sarah reached out again. A text this time. Short, uncharacteristically simple. Could we talk for a minute sometime this week? I agreed, mostly out of responsibility. She came by the rental again. No dramatics, no manipulation, just a woman trying her best to keep herself from falling apart in front of me. She looked older, tired, someone who hadn't been sleeping well for months. She told me Jason had taken space, which was code for ran away from the fallout. She said her doctor recommended reducing stress. She said the boys seemed happier with me. She said she regretted how some things happened. Not an apology, not ownership. Just a soft acknowledgement that the life she'd chosen wasn't the life she expected. I didn't argue, I didn't comfort her. I didn't say I told you so. I just nodded, neutral, firm, unshakable. She wasn't talking to the old Mike, the one who bent over backwards to keep the peace. She was talking to the man who finally understood his worth. When she left, she looked back at the Impala one more time. I could almost see the calculation in her eyes, the realization that while she lost everything, I gained something she couldn't touch, a life of my own. There's no revenge message louder than peace. There's a moment, somewhere, months after the dust settles, when you realize you aren't surviving anymore, you're living, not pushing through, not pretending, actually living. And it hits you in the smallest, quietest ways. For me, it happened on an ordinary Tuesday. The boys were at school, I'd just wrapped up a morning of writing, the kind of workday that used to leave me drained, but now flowed easily. I stepped outside with a cup of coffee, leaned against the Impala, and listened to the wind rattle the oak tree in the yard. Simple moment, nothing profound, but it settled in my chest like a truth I'd been circling without naming. I made it through. I didn't just get out, I got reborn. Divorce is supposed to scar you, leave you bitter or paranoid or closed off. But instead of breaking me, mine stripped away everything that wasn't meant to stay. And what was left was me. The me I'd lost somewhere around the time I learned to silence every want and bend every edge for the sake of keeping a marriage from collapsing under its own weight. The final proof came in an unexpected place: co-parenting. By this point, Sarah and I were stable in the logistical sense. We communicated respectfully. We showed up for school things. We didn't fight. We didn't push. We didn't try to relitigate the past. We were two adults managing two kids, nothing more. But something shifted after her second attempt to talk. She didn't try to hint at reconciliation, didn't try to pull emotional threads, didn't try to rewrite the past. Instead, she did something I never expected from her. She stepped back. Custody transitions became smoother. She stopped nitpicking, stopped monitoring my decisions, stopped trying to assert control through guilt or micromanagement. She was polite, even soft-spoken. And whether she meant to or not, she made something very clear. She finally understood I was gone. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, fundamentally. She lost her grip on me because there was nothing left to grip. That understanding led to another shift: the boys. Once they saw both homes settle into stability, they opened up even more. Their grades shot up, they got more active, they cracked more jokes. They started asking if we could take longer drives in the Impala, maybe even road trips when school ended. I promised them we would. One night, after dropping them at Sarah's, I realized something I never thought I'd feel: gratitude. Not for her actions, those were indefensible, but for the chain of events that pushed me out of a life that was slowly suffocating me. It doesn't matter how long you hold your breath, breathing again always feels like a miracle. A few weeks later, I ran into an old mutual friend at the grocery store, someone who knew us before, someone who'd watched our marriage from the outside and always assumed we were rock solid. He looked at me for a long second and said, almost surprised, "Man, you look good. Like, actually good." I laughed it off, but he shook his head. "No, I mean it. Happier, lighter, 10 years younger. I'm not joking." I didn't need the compliment, but it landed in a way I didn't expect. Not because I cared about how people saw me, but because it reflected something I'd begun to feel. Divorce didn't take a chunk out of my life. It gave me the part I'd been missing. Something else happened around then, something small but symbolic. The Impala needed a little maintenance, nothing major, just routine stuff. The boys came with me to the garage. At some point, the mechanic, a gruff, older guy with a beard that looked like it had been carved from steel wool, asked how long I'd owned the car. "Not long," I said. "Bought it after the divorce." He nodded like he'd heard 1,000 versions of that sentence in his life. Then he said, "Good. Every man deserves one thing in life that's just his." And that stuck with me. Not because it was about the car, but because it was about ownership of your own joy. I'd gone so long without anything that belonged solely to me that I forgot how good it felt to have something that wasn't shared, negotiated, or condemned. The car wasn't just a dream. It was a symbol that I'd finally stopped asking for permission to live. Meanwhile, Sarah kept her distance. Word around the grapevine, and yes, Baton Rouge has grapevines under every oak tree, was that her thing with Jason had finally imploded for good. No big revelations, just the natural, predictable collapse of two people who built a relationship on secrecy and resentment. He moved out, she kept the apartment they couldn't afford. The stress took its toll. She looked older than her age, hollow, tired. But that was her life now, one she shaped with her own hands. Not my circus, not my monkeys, not my burden. The boys didn't bring him up anymore. They didn't bring her stress up much either. I think they understood instinctively that pain doesn't need an audience. Then came the real final moment, the closure I didn't know I was waiting for. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't revenge. It was a day in early spring when the boys and I were driving home, windows down, evening sun slanting across the hood of the Impala. My youngest was laughing at something dumb. My oldest was arguing about where to get dinner. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and gasoline. And it hit me, quietly, without drama. I won. Not in the competitive sense, not against her. Against the version of myself who once thought he'd never recover. I won peace. I won my kids' trust. I won my own voice back. I won a life that feels like mine for the first time in decades. Losing the house was never the punishment. It was the escape route. Buying the Impala wasn't the revenge. It was the celebration. The real story wasn't a cheating wife or a broken marriage. The real story was everything that came after. And if I could go back and tell the Mike who sat in that office staring at Sarah's phone records one thing, it would be this: you're not about to lose anything. You're about to gain the life you always should have had.
Thanks for listening till the end. What do you think about the main character's choice? What would you do in his place? Let me know in the comments, and if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.